as godfather of wearables, well, I'm sure that you noticed that Apple just released its latest smartwatch.
Sure.
So, what do you think of this latest wearable device, and what are its pros and cons?
So it's good. They're still struggling with the problems of the batteries don't really last long enough. And one of the problems with having something on your wrist is that it's very public, right? Whereas something that's in your pocket can be something that's a little more private, can be a little more complicated, and I haven't sorted all that out. So I like it. I'm not going to buy one.
You're not?
No.
Okay. Well, 3 years ago, I remember that you predicted that the Apple Watch would be a turning point for the wearable devices, and the market seems to have confirmed your estimation. Here I have some figures. In the second quarter of this year, 3.4 million Apple Watches were sold, an increase of almost 50% compared with the same period last year, and it even took up 13% of the market share in wearable devices. But a lot of people say that Apple Watch is just good for style and appearance, and its function is too simple to bring any revolutionary changes to the industry. So generally speaking, has the Apple Watch lived up to your expectations?
Well, my expectations were not very high.
Really?
So yes, it has.
Okay.
Well, the problem is that if you look at the form factor and what you can do, there's only a certain amount you can do on the wrist. The thing everybody misses is that wearables are about social interaction. They're not about information. So in social interaction, you and I are talking. If I stop and I go like this, that's very rude, right? I might as well pull something out of my pocket, and so this doesn't offer me much, except in subtle ways. Like for instance, if we're talking and I go like that, then you know I'm concerned about time. So it's a quiet way to communicate with you without actually saying anything. So that's all about the social interaction between you and me, not about the information. So watches are good. It's interesting. I don't think they're going to be qualitatively different than the phone-based systems. They'll continue. It'll be standard. What'll be really interesting is when people begin to do things that are either really genuinely medical or things that are more genuinely social.
I see. So the key word is the social interaction, not the information.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. So another figure shows that in the second quarter of this year, the sales volume of all smartwatches increased almost 61% across the world. So does it mean that the smartwatch will become the most mainstream wearable device in future?
It may become the first mainstream device, right? Absolutely. I think a lot of it depends on battery technology more than anything else. That sounds stupid, but that's the gating functionality. But that doesn't mean it's really a wearable technology revolution, because the things that happen on smartwatches aren't all that different than the things that happen on phones. But it's a good start.
Yesterday, I Googled wearable devices, and I got 2.8 million results.
Yeah.
But when I Googled wearable devices in Chinese, only 500,000 matches. So it means that many Chinese are still unfamiliar with this concept. So how would you define wearable devices, and what's the biggest difference between wearable devices and other smart devices?
Well, I think, again, the primary thing that's different is that most smart devices are about functionality and IT. So certainly computers, phones, things like that. Things like the IT that's built into cars is about function of the car. The thing about wearables is that they're primarily social devices. They're like clothes. Why do we wear clothes like this? Well, it's to communicate to certain things, to be able to help us with our social interactions. And that's still a concept that's being worked out in society, because it's not like you can just invent it. You also have to educate people and get them to use it in the social interaction.
So let's imagine if the wearables technology became more sophisticated, and if the wearables prevailed in the world, what changes would it bring to the world and our current lifestyle?
Well, the things that we focus on mostly at MIT are how it would change work.
Yeah.
Because that'll be an early adopter place, right? So it can make work be a lot less siloed, a lot more fluid, a lot more productive, potentially a lot more creative. And that's very good, right? Everybody has a workplace where there's 2 or 3 people that cause problems. You might get rid of that. Or places where the boss never listens, you might actually help that. That could be very good.
I see.
Similarly, there's a lot of social situations now, dating, meetings, things like that, that don't work so well because we live everywhere. We're scattered around the globe. We have so many other channels of information that it makes the physical interaction not as good as it might have been. And I think that that's a place where it'll really transform.
I see. Well, Sandy, I know that you have been working on one of the devices called the social meter. So is it available in the market right now? And could you please introduce some of its functions to the Chinese audience?
Well, there's a spin-off company that I have called Humanize, and it produces sociometers, but it's mostly for business. And so for business, it's to be able to understand how information flows within your organization. Every organization has these silos where the information doesn't leak out and has groups that don't work well. And so what it's doing is helping people manage their corporate asset, their knowledge better. So for instance, large corporations like Exxon have put hundreds of millions of dollars into building new facilities, new buildings, but they don't know how well they work. The badges help them and help the employees understand how to make use of the new architecture and how to be more innovative. And so that's a real transformation. We also have an open source version of it called Rhythm, for organizational rhythm, where you can produce them for very low money. And so several startups around the country, around the world, are beginning to use our design. And it's as you'd expected. The badges talk to your phone, talk to the central computer, to let everybody know about the social situation, about the patterns of communication within the organization. And that way you can design your interaction, your workflow, what you do to work better.
But the application of these products is still limited, right?
Yeah, it's still limited. It's early days.
So
because people are concerned about privacy.
I see.
I don't want my boss watching me, right? So we engineer it so that it can't understand words and so that you can't see when the person went to the bathroom and things like that, right?
I see.
But people have to get used to it.
Well, in China, the most popular wearable device is probably the sports bracelet.
Yeah.
I bought one 4 months ago, but I lost any interest very quickly. Yes, it can tell me how many hours I slept and how many kilometers I walked and my heart rate, but I never know how I can use this information to improve my health.
So I think that the average use of a sports band like that is something like 4 days, right? And the reason is sort of obvious, is that so you use it, you sort of learn, oh, I sleep this well, that's what that feels like, but now I don't need it anymore. I know what it feels like. I know maybe I'll put it on next year or something, or if I'm not feeling good. But it doesn't help you all the time with new things to make your life better. And particularly, it's not a social device at all. It's a personal, how to get more healthy type of a device. And that has limited interest.
But in your opinion, how should a perfect or ideal sports bracelet help improve one's health conditions?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't even know whether you have it on or not, right? So you can imagine something that's actually like under your skin or something like that, right? You sort of inject it in a pharmacy or something. And you should also have something that really helps you with things that you're worried about. So for instance, are you worried about diabetes or stroke or Alzheimer's, or there's serious diseases out there, and wearables could help you with that. They could genuinely help you stay much better protect your children, things like that. Being in better shape, better condition to run and so forth, that's nice, but that's not a must-have.
But if I need more professional suggestions from doctors or some others, so do I need to provide all the information to the companies
it's changing, right? Oh, to the companies first? No.
And then share the information.
So, like for instance, I was seeing my doctor recently, and he showed me this little wearable device that you stick under your skin, and what it does is it warns you when your heart is not working correctly. It sends it to your phone, and then it goes to the doctor. So you don't share it to the company at all.
Oh, really? How does it work in detail, please?
Well, so there's several different cases I could point to, but let me just point at one case, which is that when people are beginning to not feel well, they change their behavior, right? We all know that.
Yeah.
You've said probably to a friend, oh, you don't seem yourself today. You're not acting like yourself. Well, that's because as you get sick, you don't feel the same way, right? So your phone, sports bracelets can see that. Your data changes also. And you can use that as a way to warn somebody when they're getting sick before they're even aware of it. But now think what would happen if you could look at the signals, say, from everybody in a neighborhood. Oh, you said, this neighborhood is not feeling well. Maybe the flu is going through there, or maybe the water is bad, or the air is bad. Because what happens is people change their behavior when they're attacked by the environment. So if the air is really bad, you're going to see people's behavior change. If the water has pollution in it, you see people's behavior change. So this is a way to have an early warning when the environment is bad, when sickness is happening. And that's hugely important for keeping people healthy. The earlier you can detect it, the easier it is to fix.
But again, the cost of such a social function or service is that all the consumers have to share their personal data. Right?
So the question is who owns that data?
Yeah.
Right? And that's a question of how do you handle the data. So today, the mindset is all the data goes to the company, okay, and the company owns the data. But that's not the only way to organize it. It could be that the data is collected in something that you control, like a data bank that you control, right? And you share some with the company, some with the government to be able to look for public health, maybe some with your family, things like that, so that you control it. Particularly for health things, the company is not necessarily helping me. Maybe my doctor is helping me. Maybe it's some other institute.
I see.
And so you see, beginning to see companies that make things like health bands, but you control the data, not the company. Okay? And so people like that better. They buy it more.
I see. But apart from improving the public health, are there any potential social function that the wearable devices might have in other areas like the public security?
Well, so that's one of the reasons that I'm here, and we're here today, is to look at the other areas where you can use that sort of technology for the public good. So, for instance, you can use it obviously for making traffic better. We all have navigation aids, so that's data from our wearable device, a phone, being used to help us get around. But you can also use it for city planning, to make the roads better, to make the policies of how to do things better, right? So that's sort of obvious. It also turns out that you can do things as you can see economic distress. So people change their behavior when they're worried about money. So you can see areas where unemployment is going up. Another example is to be able to look at changes in real estate value. Can we make it so that all parts of the city get valuable, not just a few places? Okay, so we're working with several cities in trying to make their economic development much better using this sort of data.
Do you think that such exchange or sharing of data is fair? I mean, you think that the company and government should pay for using the public's data?
Well, I think that citizens should have benefits from using the data. Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean money, perhaps they would get better services. Perhaps they would have better knowledge about how to navigate in their life. Not everything is money, okay? And so in Europe, for instance, this is the things I do with Europe, with the European Union, they've decided that citizens have greater rights over their data, as they call it, their privacy law. But really, it's about citizens having rights over data, okay? What that leads to is citizens more participating in the data economy, and what that leads to is more benefit to citizens from data sharing. So that's really the thing that's happening in Europe. And my group is supported by Europe, by France, by some other governments, to help them build the systems that provide that sort of thing. Also, I just joined the board of directors for the United Nations Global Partnership to be able to establish these things, to make this a standard policy around the world. So we've gotten every country to sign up to this.
Including China.
Including China. And now we have to see, can we make it real? Okay, so that's part of why I'm here, is to help have people understand why it's to their advantage to have citizens having rights over data.
Well, I remember in 2014, I just mentioned that you delivered a speech in Beijing and made a very optimistic predictions about the future of wearable devices. But in the past 3 years, I noticed that the development of the wearables industry is lower than expected. Here I have some examples. You know, Pebble sold its software business to Fitbit. Intel and Jawbone closed its wearable business. Motorola stopped its research and development of smartwatch, and Google Glass reduced its output. Why is that?
So whenever there's a new technology, at the beginning there's lots of failure. People don't get it right. In many cases, it's because they're misunderstanding what the wearable device is. They think of it like a small computer or something like that. And that's not going to work. They have to think about what it adds to the daily life.
Yeah.
Okay? So, and of course they have the competition from the smartphone. Right? So okay, how does it actually better? Why not just do it on a smartphone? It's so much cheaper, right? Things like that. So, you know, it's a hard early days for wearable. But as you said, more and more people are using these things.
Yeah.
As battery technology gets better, as people find things that people like, it will spread. And it will spread very quickly. You know, it's hard to know exactly which things will be the first. What I was predicting, and I still think is true, is you see it in particular verticals, you know, like healthcare professionals. So they wear more wearables now in corporations to help communication inside the corporation. Well, you see corporations beginning to do that in various other sorts of specific types of vertical where people need their hands free, where they're concerned about interacting in complicated ways. There you're seeing wearables take off.
Yeah, you just mentioned that, you know, there are so many wearable devices that have the same function as smartphones. So people will argue that why should I have? So
the word function is sort of not the right thing. It's you should focus on one benefit to the consumer. Okay? So if the benefit is better networking or better communication in the company, I don't know if that's one function, but it's one benefit. It's a reason for having this thing. The other thing is because this is on your body, it has to be stylish, it has to be convenient, it has to fit everybody, right? It took you know, generations, centuries to get glasses right? It took, you know, generations and centuries to get shirts correctly, shoes, you know, and so you shouldn't expect wearables to go all that much faster. People have to sort of learn what feels good, how it fits with day-to-day behavior. It will take a little while.
Well, the wearable devices are so smart and handy. So I was wondering another thing, you know, if people rely on them too much, do you think you know, the wearable devices will probably undermine the humans' capability of memorizing and socializing.
That's a really interesting comment. So, you know, when writing was first introduced, printing, not just writing, but printing, it was generally thought to be a bad thing because of that. It said it would undermine people's memories.
Yes.
Right? When people first learned how to read generally, not just a few people, right, but more general literacy, people were worried about undermining their memories and their ability to do things. And in fact, in every time they're correct, it does undermine that, but it means you're now freed to think about other things. And you end up having shared things with society, with books, with other sort of things that mean that your total memory is much bigger, your total understanding is much bigger, and now you can focus more on the things that are more interesting, like what's going to happen in the future, what should we do, how does it feel, not just memorizing facts. So that's the history. We have a couple thousand years of going through this. Perhaps the biggest change, though, is now as things get more computerized, you can begin predicting the future in little ways. It's like, for instance, these navigation aids will tell you it's going to take 23 minutes to drive from here to there. Well, you never really knew that before, and it lets you arrange your life to be better, to leave the right amount of time, because you can predict things a little bit better. Or, for instance, when you meet someone nowadays, you don't say exactly where you meet them. You say, in some park, and then as you get to the park, you say, I'm in this corner. And what that means is you're relying on just-in-time information sharing to manage your life, which is better. People like it better. It works better.
I think the problems that wearable devices have encountered currently, are very complicated. And one of the biggest problems is probably that it can easily intrude people's privacy. You just mentioned that. For example, the Google glasses are forbidden in many coffee shops in America, as I know, because they can be used to take photos and videos without any permission. So how would you balance between the development of the wearables technology and privacy protection?
So there are many applications where privacy isn't such a concern. So for instance, if you're in a hospital in an operating room, privacy is not a concern. If you're a policeman, you know, you want to have a record of what happened, et cetera, et cetera. So there are many places where it's specialized, people's hands are full, you need information, you need a record, that makes sense. One of the obvious problems that Google Glass has is they shouldn't have put a camera in there, right? So I wouldn't object to it if, no one would object to it, I don't think, if it didn't have the camera. If it was just something to remind you and something to, you know, give you extra information, well, that's like your phone. That's not really different. The moment they put the camera in there, it became a problem.
But I think the logic is the same. And I think that, you know, with the development of technology, maybe the situation will get worse. For example, with the glasses, maybe it's not Google, but maybe with another special glasses on, people can access a stranger's basic information via face or voice recognition technology. Is that true?
You can set up things to make that more easy.
Yes.
Right? But there are certain situations where it's common. For instance, if you go to a conference, right, you exchange cards. Well, what did you just do? Well, you just exchanged all that information that you were saying could be a problem. No, in that situation, you're supposed to exchange information, right? And you're supposed to do it in a way that doesn't get in the way of the social situation. Well, the problem, of course, is when you do that and you don't intend to. Right? Okay, so then you need to have ways of turning it off. And in my laboratory, when we first developed these technologies, we had ways of limiting who you exchanged what with. So it's a little like privacy controls, right? So I can be invisible to you, I can be invisible to everybody except my close friends. Okay, well then that solves a lot of the problem that you just brought up. When I go to a conference and I want to meet lots of people, I can make myself more visible.
I see.
But this is a social convention. people have to understand it, they have to feel comfortable. It's not a question of technology, it's a question of people. And people understanding and feeling good about it.
Well,
people are slow.
of course, there will be many benefits. For example, I can easily tell if you have criminal records or if you want to deceive me, right? It's a benefit, right?
Well,
based on the face of
but
voice
it's more
recognition.
complicated than that, right? So you can imagine that's a benefit if you were a police officer, right? Or if you were in Macau and I was trying to buy chips, right? You would like to know if I have a long criminal record.
Right.
And that might be fair, but not in everyday life, right? And so again, that's an aspect of privacy.
So be it good or bad, I think, the exposure of personal information will definitely bring risks. For example, the attacks from hackers. So, what responsibilities do you think the companies like Google and Fitbit should take to protect?
So people always focus on the bad things, but also focus on the good things. I mean, if you can make all your institutions work better, if companies are more innovative, if government is more fair, if it's easier to find friends and have fun, those are benefits. Okay, don't forget those parts.
Yes.
And then the problem is, of course, if you have those benefits, you also have risks, for instance, hackers and things like that. So one needs to balance both of them. I think the fundamental problem, most of the things that you would point to, are because the way our current data handling is done is stupid. Right? We have these streams of data that get held by single people in these great big pools. We know that most of the attacks that happen are on those pools of data where lots of things come together. The obvious answer is don't have pools. Keep the data where it's created. Data has to be tracked so that we know who had the data, who was doing things with it, what they were doing. It turns out that's not difficult to do from a computer science point of view. It's been the easy way to think about it to not do it that way. Okay, so that's the sort of software architecture that we're building at MIT. That's what the EU is beginning to adopt. That's what companies in the US are beginning to adopt because of security, mostly, right? They're worried about hackers. They know that the current systems just don't work. So we have a way of doing things that is far safer, intrinsically far safer, than the way current practice is.
So how should the government do to protect the consumers'
Well,
privacy?
so government should do the same type of thing, right? And you see that in some governments. So I was just in Estonia, a little part of Europe, right? And they have an extremely secure system, uses blockchain to be able to log where the data is. It doesn't concentrate data in one place. The data is kept in its home where it can be more safe. You can see who accesses your data anytime in the world, right? Any place in the world, you can see your data and who's using it and why. And so that's a really strong system. It could be better, but that's the sort of thing that government can do. And the same thing needs to happen here in China. That we need to, I've heard very senior people in the Chinese government worry about Chinese governments exploiting Chinese citizens, right? And so that they worry that there needs to be a different architecture, or what I call a new deal on data, right? That protects the citizen from government companies doing things that are unfair, and makes it much more transparent. I think that that's something that will happen, but it will take a while.
Well, how about the consumers? Do you have any suggestions for them to tell them how to protect their own privacy when using wearable devices?
Well, they just have to pay attention to it, that's all. Most people don't pay too much attention to it.
Okay. The final question, how far are we away from a mature wearable era?
Oh, I think we may be 20 years or more.
20 years.
But you ask, why 20 years? I think there's two things. One is people have to learn how to integrate them into society. So there's the human time, which is usually a generation. And then there's batteries. Batteries still aren't there. They'll take a while to have it.
It's very quick because I will raise as many quick fire questions as I can, and I hope your answers could be very direct and concise. Okay.
Okay.
We collected these questions from different platforms. I mean, from the internet. Well, the first one. Let's start. Among all wearable devices that you invented or helped invent, which one are you most proud of?
Probably the name badges and the Google Glass.
Okay. What kind of function do you want to integrate most in wearables?
Social intelligence.
When you are recruiting students, do you use the social meter to judge their personality and potential?
No, but I do use the same type of approach.
Wow. Can people use wearables to lose weight quickly?
Sure.
How?
Mostly to monitor what you eat, not so much what you exercise.
Can people use wearables to fly freely in the future?
Fly?
Yes.
Doubt it.
How can wearable devices help single people find their Mr. or Miss Right?
By helping people be more aware of their social environment.
Okay. Can wearable devices help us read people's minds?
No.
Can wearable devices help us read pets' minds?
Yes.
How?
Pets have a great deal of signaling of what's in their minds. Mm-hmm. They're not as complicated as people.
Okay. How can wearable devices help the disabled?
Through providing them different ways to act and different ways to absorb information.
Mm-hmm. Can wearable devices deal with the air pollution in Beijing?
It could, by making people more aware about their actions and the impact on air pollution.
Mm-hmm. In what situations do you feel most inspired? Showering, coffee breaks, or when nature calls?
Probably showering.
Where does your inspiration usually come from? Books, internet, movies, or chatting?
Chatting.
What book inspires you the most?
The Foundation Trilogy.
What movie inspires you the most?
Avatar.
What's your favorite smartphone application?
Favorite?
Yes.
The phone.
Okay. Will people be able to switch memories in the future?
We already do.
Can people be immortal?
No.
What abilities will be enhanced when humans evolve?
Our ability to understand each other.
What abilities will be weakened when human beings evolve?
Our ability to remember all the details.
Will traditional paper books disappear completely?
No.
What will the next generation of transportation look like?
It will look like little tiny smart cars.
Wow, cool. In how many years will smartphone disappear?
It won't.
It won't.
No.
What functions do you want the next generation smartphones to have?
Better interface to wearables.
Which is the future, AR or VR?
AR.
Many people are talking about a smart city in China. What do you think is the most important thing to develop a smart city?
It's the ability to see where the people are and where they're going and what they want to do.
The concept of sharing economy is very popular now. For example, Uber, Airbnb, shared bicycles, and even shared umbrella. What other things do you think should be shared or could be shared?
Real estate.
Can technology make people more lazy?
It could, but I don't think it will.
Okay. Would highly developed technology lead to an increase in unemployment?
No.
What jobs are most likely to be replaced by AI?
The jobs people hate.
What jobs are least likely to be replaced by AI?
Any job that has to do with interacting with people.
What disciplines are the most important in the AI era?
Understanding people and the STEM.
Okay. What disciplines may be eliminated in the AI era?
Ditch digging.
What new disciplines will appear in universities in the future?
I think universities will change dramatically.
Okay. If the human brain can be implanted with a chip, does it mean that people don't have to study anymore?
No.
Which do you prefer, traveling to the past or to the future?
Future.
If you can travel to the past, what historic event would you want to change most?
Change. I don't know.
If you can travel to the future, what would you do?
I would try to make information sharing and data sharing much more human.
Okay. Is it possible to devise a program or technology to predict when people will die?
No.
How do you think the world will end? Nuclear war, global warming, or other reasons?
I think it will evolve.
Would it be necessary for humans to migrate to space one day?
It's already necessary.
If one day humans have to leave the Earth, what should we have to take along with us?
Our culture.
Do you believe in aliens?
Sure.
If you were abducted by aliens, what would you do?
Talk to them.
The final question. Which one do you believe more, data or God?
I think that they're not that distinct.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you.
Yeah, pleasure.
Sorry for bothering you so much time. Yeah.
I should have given a slightly wise-ass answer to that last one.
Sorry.
In the Christian religion, it's the tree of knowledge
Oh, really?
that Adam and Eve,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
So that's interesting, right? So that's your data and God, right? So in the Christian religion, the thing that makes us human was the ability to use data and see the world around us.
I
and
see.
that was the thing that took people out of the grace of God. At least that's what the mythology says, right?
Thank you. Thank you. We record your answer. I think, yeah.
Well,
thank
it's
you.
interesting,
Thank you.
right? You know,
Thank you. It's very interesting.
And that was the fall of people also.
Yeah,
So it was
okay.
very complicated. I don't know what it is in Chinese, right?